All right, everybody. It's Tuesday night, Spooky Tuesday.
Spooky Tuesday.
You know who this guy is? Here, I'm going. He was giving me the finger earlier. Two fingers.
I did this right here. I was trying to do that. I just like I don't know what I was doing. I was poking.
So how were you doing 3D?
That's an app I found on the Google Play Store, 3D photo. And
So you must have had a slow day today.
Well, after a slow afternoon, took a break from work.
Well, anyway, I'm Kelsey in Abnormal, Alabama. This guy right there, Kevin. And of course, everybody knows that if you've seen the show, see, not everybody's seen the show before. So you've always got to still say, I've written a book. I've written more than one book. Dating the Dead and Spectrophilia can be found on datingthedead.com. Easiest way to find the book. It's on Amazon and whatnot, but one-stop shopping, datingthedead.com. And then the guy over there that's acting silly today. What you got, Kevin?
Crimson the Blood Painting, a novel based on an actual haunted painting that I have here in my collection. And it came from Salem, Massachusetts, and the story was so creepy, I just had to write a novel based on it.
Gosh.
I've got it on you can go on my website right there, myhauntedDolls.com, and purchase it, or it's out there on Amazon. It's on Kindle. It's on audiobook, so it's everywhere it needs to be.
Everywhere.
She's everywhere.
I'm trying to, let's see, I want to update something here, and I will share something in a minute. But yeah, I'm going, there we go. And let's see, we got that. Here we go. All right. What is that? If you haven't heard of the wishing machine, my version of the wishing machine, it has to do with radionics. And if you don't know anything about that, I'm not going to take a lot of time to enlighten you. I could, though. We got 2 hours.
Yeah.
Got to fill up 2 hours here. So maybe I can, let me see. What is radionics? So real quick, radionics is a science using a force or frequency to identify or analyze a subject and then change that frequency by means of broadcasting an energy to the subject, even over long distances. Confusion begins in the broadcasting of an energy to change the frequency. In other sciences, our thoughts are confined strictly to the physical world. Radionics works in higher levels of the mind that may involve higher dimensions of reality and consciousness, possibly interdimensional. We think of our world as three-dimensional. Staying in our concept of the physical world, we send energy to the etheric bodies of a subject by using an instrument, which that in itself is not absolutely true, because prayer, in a sense, is sending our energy and thoughts out to what we call God. Some people have demonstrated ability to use a picture as a specimen and other devices. And all this, by the way, is on the website, drkelseywishmaker.com. So you're using the power of your mind to affect a change. And that's pretty much what we always do. I like to refer back to a couple of books that I read as a teenager that had a lot of influence on my life. And they were written by Norman Vincent Peale. And he wrote, Expect a Miracle, Make Miracles Happen. And then he also wrote The Power of Positive Thinking. And so these methods work. A lot of people are sold on it, and you can affect change, by your thinking. So it's amazing what you can accomplish with that. So radionics is sometimes called psychotronics, and is tuned energy, tuned into a frequency. The reality is that they even know what frequency, when your heart beats, they have been able to discover what frequency your heart, because you're putting out energy. So you can, it's like, I refer people to a crystal radio. And do you know what a crystal radio is?
I think I've heard that term before, but I don't know exactly what it is.
Well, if you've got a radio, you usually have to put a battery in it, or you got hooked up to electricity some way. A crystal radio, you can pretty much build yourself real easily. One of the first things I did as a young guy, because I was a nerdish type character. Anyway, you use a diode. You don't use any electricity, and you can receive radio stations with this device without using a battery, without using any electricity. And you create a tuner for it by using like the roll of a paper towel or toilet paper roll, and you wind like a thin copper wire around it, so many loops, and you can actually tune that into radio stations and listen to it best with like a mono ear plug device. It's not amplified. You're not going to rock the neighborhood with it. you can pick up. So that's what we're dealing with, energy. It's all about energy. And this is what this box, some people swear by it. I used to listen a long time ago to Art Bell. He would interview Joshua Warren. This has been around for 100 years. People have different takes on it. On mine, this particular unit I just built over the Sunday and mailed it out yesterday to Germany.
Yeah.
And so I built all this from the ground up, as they say. Right here, what I've done is I have added a Tesla coil. You know what a Tesla coil is?
Some kind of coil.
If you'll see, you know who Tesla was.
Tesla, yeah, I've heard that name.
Okay, not the car.
Not the car.
Yeah. But he was working on electricity, and his whole thing was to be able to project, not have to run wires, just send electricity through the air like we do radio waves. This is what this device does right here. You see it on the upper left-hand corner of this. There's the coil, and that is plugged in. That's what that black wire there is. And that little light bulb to the right of that coil is not connected to anything.
Oh.
I've just got that light bulb sitting there to show that that coil is projecting enough electricity to light that bulb without it being connected, screwed in, attached in any way. Okay? So I'm taking the wishing machine. You can see there right in front of the Tesla coil, underneath that metal I've got there is where I've got the winding of a copper.
Okay.
Yeah. And of course, it's connected to all these knobs. I'm not going to give a big rundown on how all this works. That's called a stick plate. But you put your intention over by the Tesla coil on what's called the witness plate. And you can see where it says witness plate.
Yeah.
And you're adjusting those knobs. And I've got a video and also a written form of how this works. But take over for a second. I've got to do something here real quick.
Okay. All right. Well, I wish I knew about that, how that thing works, so I could keep the lecture going. Let me see here. I guess while we're waiting on that, we can go ahead and talk about. I wanted to tell about an urban legend that I have loved. I first heard when I was a little kid. You probably heard it when you were a little kid. This one's been around a long time. And there's different variations of it. People said, it's true. It happened to a friend of mine, or it happened in my neighborhood. Everybody says it's happened in their neighborhood, and so forth and so on. But they actually came out and discovered this really did actually happen, and or it is based on something that actually happened. And the urban legend is the babysitter and the man upstairs. Probably one of the most horrifying urban legends out there, especially for young women, teenage girls who babysit. That's just the last thing you want to hear when you go to Babysit a child or two alone in a house is about a babysitter in peril. So I'm going to read to you here what we have. The call is coming from inside the house. These 8 words have been uttered by countless children and mark one of the most popular urban legends of all time. Children have been telling this story, sometimes called the babysitter and the man upstairs, for decades at slumber parties and swearing they know the sister of the person it happened to. This legend, unfortunately, isn't just a tale made up to frighten your childhood best friend. It's rooted in an actual unsolved murder case from 1950. All right, so what is the babysitter urban legend? For those that haven't heard this legend in a decade or more, or never heard it at all, which I'd be surprised, here's a quick refresher. Usually goes along the lines of this. Jane was babysitting for the Millers for the first time. The Millers' kids, Bobby and Tiffany, were already asleep when Jane arrived. She was doing her homework at the kitchen table when the phone rang. "Hello," Jane asked, but heard only heavy breathing in return. She hung up the phone and walked to the front door to make sure it was locked. The phone rang again. Jane picked up and said, "Hello." "Have you checked the children?" said a low voice from the other end. Confused, Jane asked who was calling, but the caller was gone. 15 minutes later, the phone rang again, and the caller asked the same question. "Have you checked the children?" Jane knew she should go upstairs to check on Bobby and Tiffany, but her legs were too weak to safely climb the stairs. She called the Millers several times but could not get a hold of them. Next, Jane called the operator to see if it was one of her classmates trying to frighten her. The operator asked her to hold while she traced the calls. When the operator came back on the line, she told Jane, "Get out of the house now. I'll send the police. The calls are coming from inside the house." In some variations of this tale, the girl is able to get the children out of the house, and the police come and they find the man upstairs hiding in the closet. He had been calling from a separate line. He had broken in and decided to harass the babysitter before stealing the goods. In some worse variations, children finds them dead. The man sitting there on the floor with his body covered in their blood. So, and of course, a couple of movies have been based on this urban legend. The original Black Christmas with Olivia Hussey, and then When a Stranger Calls with Carol Kane. But there's actually some truth behind this urban legend. In fact, I'm going to throw up the article here. As you said, it was, this house where the babysitter was slain. The truth is even more horrifying, so be warned. The origin of the babysitter and the man upstairs story is believed to be a murder that happened in the town of Columbia, Missouri, right here in the Southeast, in March of 1950. 8th grader Jeanette Christman had decided to skip a party with her classmates to babysit for a local family named the Romacks. The 3-year-old boy she was babysitting was already asleep when she arrived. It was kind of an eerie night, recalled Janet's friend Carol decades later in the documentary called Killer Legends, which I recommend. Check that out. It's a good documentary. "I also was babysitting and I just felt uneasy," she said. Reports say that night in Columbia, the temperature was below freezing and it was raining and sleeting. Little is known about what happens next, but here's what we know. Jeanette Christman was raped and strangled to death with an iron cord. The killer was likely someone she knew. Jeanette tried to call the police, but all they heard on the other end of the line were desperate screams telling them to come quick. Police were unable to trace the call. Soon after Jeanette's phone call to the police, Mistress Romack tried calling to check in on how the night was and see how her children were. She received a busy signal, but thought little of it. It was only when the Romacks came home that they realized what the busy tone had probably been. The phone was still off the hook, while nearby, Jeanette lay dead. And there's the actual crime scene photo there. That's her leg over there on the right side. Despite the urban legend, there's no hard evidence that Jeanette's killer placed any calls to the Romax phone on the night of the murder, either from inside or outside the house. So we have to debunk the scariest line from that horror story, but these are the facts.
No.
The Romax found Jeanette's body on their living room floor at 1:30 a.m. when they came home. Signs of a violent struggle spread across 2 rooms. Thankfully, their 3-year-old kid was safe. He had slept through the whole ordeal. Local police questioned dozens of men in their search to find the killer. The most likely suspect was Robert Mueller, a friend of the Romacks. Mr. Romack testified that Mueller, 27 at the time, had commented on Jeanette's well-developed form. Mrs. Romack said Mueller had run his hand across her dress 2 days before the murder. Mueller was known to carry around a mechanical pencil that matched puncture wounds that police found on Jeanette's body. But police and the Boone County Sheriff's Department bungled the case against Mueller, and he was never charged in the murder. To this day, the case remains unsolved. We may never know what happened to 13-year-old Jeanette Chrisman. But that is where that urban legend came from, the babysitter and the man upstairs. As you can tell, it's been twisted and added to over time, but it did become a part of the history of urban legends.
And how long ago did that happen?
That was March of 1950 in Missouri.
Okay, in Missouri.
Yeah.
Okay.
Missouri loves company.
Okay, so I've got all of our websites up there. So you can see, and that's where you can also find more information about that. I'm sorry for the interruption, but something happened I had to take care of. But anyway, there you go with all that. And that was a good story. And I didn't get to hear every word of it, but now it's my turn to share a story. Have we shared this broadcast out there? Get this broadcast out to the public everywhere, everybody. We need peoples.
Yes.
We need peoples. Do we need peoples?
Yes, we need peoples. Need peoples.
All right, now let's go here and let me talk about the man-eating tree.
Oh.
It's also called the carnivorous tree, and it refers to any of the, it's not karaoke, but it sure does look like karaoke, legendary or cryptid carnivorous plants large enough to kill and consume a person or other large animal. This plant, with the largest known traps, is probably Nepenthes raha, which produces pitchers up to 41 centimeters, 16 inches tall, with a volume of 0.77 or 90.92 US gallons. The pitcher of this species are designed to trap arthropods such as ants. However, the same bait may also attract rodents like the summit rat. Only very rare will the rodents fall into the large pitchers of this species. Other large carnivorous plants that have similar properties include Nepenthes whatever and Nepenthes something else. I'm sorry. The Nubian tree. Phil Robinson, writing Under the Punka in 1881, related tales of his uncle's travels throughout the world. He described a man-eating tree that was to be found in Nubia. In the tale, Robinson's uncle describes the tree, quote, "This awful plant that rears its splendid death shade in the central solitude of Nubian fern forest sickens by its unwholesome humors all vegetation from its immediate vicinity, and feeds upon the wild beast that, in the terror of the chase or the heat of noon, seek the thick shelter of its boughs. Upon the birds that, flitting across the open space, come within the charmed circle of its power, or innocently refresh themselves from the cups of its great waxen flowers, upon even man himself, when an infrequent prey, the savage seeks its asylum in the storm, or turns from the harsh foot-wounding sword-grass of the glade to pluck the wondrous fruit that, having plumbed down among the wondrous foliage. And such fruit, glorious golden ovals, great honey drops, swelling by their own weight into pear-shaped translucencies. The foliage glistens with a strange dew that all day long drips onto the ground below, nurturing a rank growth of grasses, which shoot up in places so high that their spikes of fierce blood-fed green show far up among the deep-tinted foliage of the terrible tree, and like a jealous bodyguard keep concealed the fearful secret of the charnel house within, and draw round the black roots of the murderous plant a decent screen of living green. The story continues in describing how the tree captured and ate one of the uncle's native companions, and how the uncle proceeded to shoot at the tree. When his ammunition was finally exhausted, the uncle continued his work using a knife to destroy the tree, as the tree fought back with its blood-sucking leaves and entangling limbs. Then there's the vampire vine. William Thomas Steed, editor of Review of Reviews, published a brief article that discussed a story purportedly found in Lucifer magazine, describing a plant in Nicaragua called by the natives the Devil's Snare. This plant had the capability to drain the blood of any living thing which comes within its death-dealing touch. According to the article, Mr. Dustin, naturalist, who has recently returned from Central America, where he spent nearly 2 years in the study of the flora and the fauna of the country, relates the finding of a singular growth in one of the swamps which surrounds the Great Lakes of Nicaragua. He was engaged in hunting for botanical and entomological specimens when he heard his dog cry out, as if in agony, from a distance. Running to the spot whence the animal's cries came, Mr. Dunstan found him enveloped in a perfect network of what seemed to be a fine rope-like tissue of roots and fibers. The native servants who accompanied Mr. Dunstan manifested the greatest horror of the vine, which they call the Devil's Snare, and were full of stories of its death-dealing powers. He was able to discover very little about the nature of the plant, owing to the difficulty of handling it, for its grass can only be torn away with the loss of skin and even of flesh. But as near as Mr. Dunstan could ascertain, its power of suction is contained in a number of infinitesimal mouths or little suckers, which ordinarily close upon the reception of food. If the substance is animal, the blood is drawn off and the carcass or refuse then dropped. Have you run across a tree like that?
Nope. Nope.
Have you covered your 5 acres very carefully? All right. 735. We got urban legends, and we got man-eating plants.
Yeah.
And so stick around, folks. Share this, start a watch party, and we're going to tell some good, interesting, fascinating stories. Some of it could be true. It may not all be just urban legend. I don't know what Kevin has in store for you, but I know most of people that are interested in these subjects has probably heard of a Dybbuk box. And when Kevin tells his tale from the dark side, I will talk about the Dybbuk box.
Okay. I'm gonna creep y'all out again with another, kind of going along with this, kind of like a speaking of the scary babysitter urban legend. I've got another story that's not quite as heard as often. It's another creepy babysitting story. So if you're out there babysitting, you're watching this and you're babysitting some kids and you're all alone, I do apologize, but hey, these are fun stories to enjoy. This is told in the first person. It's the first person voice of a young girl telling the story. So here we go. When I dropped out of school, it wasn't easy to find work. Nobody seemed to want to hire a girl with no qualifications. I was tired of applying for jobs advertised in newspapers and on the internet without receiving any replies. One day, I spotted an ad for a job that was not so tempting, but I really needed the money. The ad said they were looking for a live-in babysitter to take care of 3 young children. It said no qualifications necessary. They just required someone young, responsible, and pretty. I called the number and the phone was answered by a woman with a sweet and friendly voice. When I told her I was calling about the babysitting job, she hired me on the spot. She didn't even want to meet me in person first, but she said she needed me to start immediately. I was delighted. The next morning, I drove over to the house to meet the family. As soon as I got there, I saw that the house was beautiful both inside and out. You could tell that the family was wealthy. The woman and her husband greeted me with broad smiles on their faces and introduced me to their children. There were 2 boys and a girl. Sebastian was 6 years old, Damien was 5, and Linko was 4. The kids seemed to be nice, happy, and friendly. They were always polite, never fought with each other, and never made a mess. All they did was play alone or read a book. The parents announced that they were going out to dinner and wouldn't be home until late that night. They told me the children had already been fed, so all I had to do was get them ready for bed. The mother gave me a phone number and told me to call her if there was an emergency. The father told me to make myself at home, and if I was hungry, he said I could take whatever I wanted from the refrigerator. After their parents left, the children sat down on the sofa to watch TV. They were very quiet and barely said a word. During a commercial, I was feeling a bit hungry, so I went into the kitchen to make myself a snack. As I was rummaging around in the refrigerator, I couldn't help but notice 2 large jars that were stuffed in the back of the fridge. Both of them were wrapped in plain brown wrapper and had a rubber band sealing the rim. I wondered what on earth could be in them. My curiosity got the better of me, so I took out one of the jars and peeled back the brown wrapper to take a little peek. It was full of long strips of fatty meat floating in a murky red liquid. I couldn't tell what kind of meat it was, but it didn't look like pork or beef. Just as I was about to put the jar back where I found it, I heard a noise behind me. It startled me so much, I banged my head on the shelf above me. When I turned around, Sebastian was standing in the doorway staring at me. "Put that back," he said. "That's not for you." The look in his eyes and the tone of his voice sent chills down my spine. "Sorry," I muttered. I was just looking for something to eat." Sebastian did not reply. He just stood there staring at me. I placed the jar back in the refrigerator and shut the door. Sebastian turned around and went back into the living room. I had lost my appetite, so I went and joined the children in the living room to watch cartoons with them. I was trying not to let my imagination get the better of me when the cartoons finished and the news came on. There was a story about a teenage girl who had gone missing. The police found her decomposing head in a dumpster. They said they had no idea what had happened to the rest of her. I was afraid the grisly news story would upset the children, so I changed the channel and told them it was time for bed. The kids didn't complain. They just walked up the stairs in single file and went into their bedroom. I put them in their pajamas and got them ready for bed. Then I tucked them in, kissed them all goodnight, and switched out the lights. When I went back downstairs, I was bored and had absolutely nothing to do, so I decided to watch a movie. I looked through the family's DVD collection, but all they had were cartoons and Disney movies. I wasn't in the mood for any more kid stuff. On the bottom shelf, I spotted some old VHS tapes. One of them had a strange title. It was titled M Girls. This seemed rather curious, so I decided to take a look at it. I put the videotape in the VCR and pressed play, then sat down on the sofa and made myself comfortable while the video started. The first thing I noticed was that it was a home video. The family must have recorded it themselves. The parents and children were all laughing and looking like they were having fun. I was about to turn it off when I happened to notice someone else in the video. It was a girl who looked like she was in her late teens. It seemed like she was the previous babysitter. She looked very familiar. It seemed like I recognized her from somewhere. Perhaps she went to my school. Then it finally hit me. Oh my freaking God, I thought. It was the missing girl from the news report. My hands were shaking. My whole body was trembling. I just wanted to get out of there as fast as possible. I jumped out of my seat, ejected the video, and put it back in its case. Then I remembered the jars in the refrigerator. I had to see what was in those jars. With a shudder, I went to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. Maybe I'm just overreacting, I thought. I reached in and took out the second jar. Peeling back the brown paper wrapper, I could see long, pale hunks of meat and strips of fat floating in the red liquid. Some of the meat looked like it had skin on it. Human skin. I could also see what looked like strands of hair. Long hair. Human hair. I was so scared I felt like I was about to pee my pants. I ripped off the rubber band that was sealing the jar and peered inside. There was an eyeball staring back at me. Horrified, I dropped the jar and it smashed on the kitchen floor. I ran to the living room, put on my jacket, grabbed the videotape, and stuffed it into my pocket. When I came out to the hallway, Sebastian was standing at the foot of the stairs. "Where are you going?" he asked. I just remembered, I stammered. I forgot something. I have to go home and get it. I'll be back in a few minutes. Damien and Linka came running down the stairs. "You can't go," screeched Damien. "You can't leave us on our own." "I'm calling our parents," shouted Linka as she picked up the phone and began dialing numbers. Sebastian grabbed hold of my leg and would not let go. "You have to stay," he squealed. "We're hungry." His grip was extremely tight, but I managed to shake him off and ran out the front door. As I dashed to my car, I saw the parents pulling into the driveway. I didn't stop for a moment. I just jumped into my car and locked all the doors. The children were on the doorstep screaming and crying. The mother and father got out of their car and came running over. There was an angry look on their faces. "What's wrong?" they shouted. "Where are you going? Come back here." I didn't answer. I just turned the key in the ignition and revved the engine. They started banging on the windows. I floored the accelerator and tore out of there like a bat out of hell and never looked back. I didn't stop until I came to the police station and told the police officers everything I knew and handed over the videotape as evidence. The police immediately dispatched 2 patrol cars, but by the time they arrived at the house, the parents and children were gone. They just took their car and disappeared. The police searched the house and found the jars in the refrigerator. They also found human flesh and bones in the basement. They did tests and confirmed that these were the remains of the missing girl. They never managed to track down the parents or the children. They're still out there somewhere, probably living under a different name, probably still on the hunt for new victims. If you want my advice, be careful who you are babysitting for. And that's the end of that creepy, gross babysitter tale. Ooh.
Ooh. Gosh, you've gotten into morbid stuff lately.
That has some cannibalism in there.
I don't know. That move to that new house, I think, really messed you up. What can I say?
I heard that tale before I ever moved here.
You did what?
I did. I heard that a while back.
Lord have mercy on my soul. 7:37, and all is well so far in our world. We are telling interesting little stories, I guess, of some sort to blow your freaking mind. And so, so hold on one second here. I am looking for something entertaining, interesting.
Oh,
Who knows?
wonder what he's going to pull up over there.
All right. So, all right. Let's see. I was looking for something that didn't find it here. That was kind of.
You mentioned the Dybbuk box earlier. Is that?
Oh yes, that was what it was. What did I? Let me get back. Thank you. I lost it for a minute.
Uh-oh.
And where was the Dybbuk box? Yes, here we go. Are you ready for this? And a lot of people, and this got to be pretty popular for a little while. You know, something catches on, they see it in a movie or something, and the next thing you know, everybody's got a YouTube channel, is into it, and then it kind of dies out for a while. And the same was with the Dybbuk box, which is DYBBUK box. And I'm not going to even get into the Hebrew of that. But it started out, the genuine Dybbuk box started as a wine cabinet, which is said to be haunted by a Dybbuk. And a Dybbuk is a restless, usually a malicious spirit to be able to haunt and even possess the living. Maybe that's what's wrong with Kevin. Gained notoriety when it was auctioned on eBay with an accompanying horror story written by Kevin Mannis, and is the original inspiration for the 2012 film Legend and History. The term Dybbuk box was first created and used by Kevin Mannis to describe a wine cabinet and the item information for an eBay auction, and as the subject of his original story describing paranormal events which he related to the box. Manus, a writer and creative professional by trade, owned a small antiques and furniture refinishing business in Portland, Oregon at the time. According to his story, he bought the box at an estate sale in 2003. It supposedly had belonged to a survivor of the Holocaust in a German-occupied Poland named Habela, who had escaped to Spain and purchased it there before her immigration into the United States. Havela's granddaughter told Manus that the box had been bought in Spain after the Holocaust, and upon hearing that the box was a family heirloom, Manus offered to give the box back to the family, but the granddaughter insisted that he take it. Wonder why? We don't own it, she said. Be careful when somebody doesn't want something, right? She said she told him the box had been kept in her grandmother's sewing room and was never opened because a Dybbuk was said to live inside of it. Well, Manus, like most men, he couldn't avoid not opening the box. And when he did, he wrote that he found that it contained two 1920s pennies, a lock of blonde hair bound with cord, a lock of black-brown hair bound with cord, a small statue engraved with the Hebrew word shalom, a small golden wine goblet, one dried rosebud, and a single candle holder with 4 octopus-shaped legs. Numerous owners of the box have reported that strange phenomena, that's Kevin's word, accompanied. In his story, Manus wrote that he experienced a series of horrific nightmares shared with other people while they were in possession of the box or when they stayed at his home while he had it. His mother suffered a stroke on the same day he gave her the box as a birthday present. Well, if you want to get rid of somebody, give them a Dybbuk box, right? October 28th. Every owner of the box has reported that smells of cat urine, Kevin should know about that, and jasmine flowers and nightmares. What's the smell of a nightmare? No, I'm sorry.
No idea.
Smells of cat urine and jasmine flowers and nightmares involving an old hag accompany the box. Losif Nitsky, a Missouri student at Truman State University in Kirksville, Missouri, and the last person to auction the box on eBay, claimed that the box caused lights to burn out in his house and his hair to fall out. Jason Haxton, director of the Museum of Osteopathic Medicine in Kirksville, Missouri, had been following Nitsky's blogs regarding the box, and when he was ready to be rid of the box, Nitsky sold it to Haxton. Haxton wrote the Dybbuk box and claimed that he subsequently developed strange health problems, including hives, coughing up blood, and head-to-toe welts. Haxton consulted with rabbis to try to figure out a way to seal the Dybbuk in the box again. Apparently successful, he took the freshly resealed box and hid it in a secret location which he will not reveal. Now, somebody in Kirksville, Missouri is going to run across that box one day and is going to open it up. There you go. So, what do you got there, Kate? You got something else for us, or you're looking like you're studying real hard?
Yeah, I've got something here. I was wondering how to pronounce this correctly. This is
Just make it up. Nobody knows.
This is a Japanese urban legend, so we're not just going out of state. We're going out of country even here.
Yeah, that's it. So, you got to do it right.
Somebody's going to be offended.
I used to like those old Jerry Lewis movies, They played all those characters.
Yeah.
All right. Go.
This is the story of I hope I'm pronouncing it right, the Teki Teki, or they shorten it and call it Tek Tek sometimes. The Teki Teki is a Japanese urban legend about a girl who fell on a railway line and, get this, she was cut in two. I meant to have a little illustration. Here we go. A little illustration of her up here. That's a creepy booger right there. All right. She is an Onryo, or vengeful spirit, who lurks in urban areas and around train stations at night. She has no lower half and carries a scythe and travels on her hands while searching for victims to cut into, mimicking her accident. The Teki Teki is universally portrayed as a girl or a young woman, usually with long black hair. She is often portrayed as having claws instead of fingernails or fingers, as these help her drag her torn body around. The legend is called Teki Teki because of the sound she makes while walking and carrying the scythe, if you want to call that. It's more like crawling. Like most urban legends, there are so many versions of the Teki Teki story that it is impossible to know what the original story was or where it began from. Every locality has its own version with different details. One version of the story concerns a young woman known as Kashima Raiko, who is said to have died when her legs were severed from her body by a train after she fell on the tracks. According to legend, her legless spirit haunts bathroom stalls, asking occupants if they know where her legs are. If a questioned individual replies with an answer that Kashima does not find acceptable, she will rip or cut their legs off. Individuals may survive the encounter by replying that her legs are on the Meishan Expressway, or by responding with the phrase Kamin Shininma, which is masked death demon, which may be the phonetic root of Kashima's name. In some stories, the Teki Teki was a victim of a tragic accident. In others, it was a suicide. In some stories, certain magic charms can protect you from its wrath. In others, nothing can protect you and you will certainly die. In some versions, the Teki Teki's victims become Teki Teki themselves. There are many things in common between these variations, and the most common ones point towards a woman from Hokkaido named Kashima Raiko. In the years of World War II, an office worker in Muroran, Hokkaido was assaulted by military personnel. She was left injured on the rail tracks and was hit by a train, which cut off her body in half. The severe cold of the Hokkaido night caused her blood vessels to contract and prevented her from bleeding out quickly. Instead, she squirmed and wriggled around for help for several minutes. She was seen by an attendant. Instead of trying to help her, the station attendant just covered her with a plastic bag. She died a slow, agonizing death. According to legend, 3 days after hearing this story, you will see the ghost of a woman with no lower half. The ghost will try to catch you, and escape is impossible, even in a car. The ghost can crawl at a speed of up to 150 kilometers per hour. Some say that the ghost is searching for her missing legs. Others say that she is simply out to slaughter as many people as she can. Another version of the story suggests that the legend was designed to deter people from bullying, abusing, or assaulting others. In many variations of the legend, the Teki Teki was mistreated by others in life, and this ill treatment directly caused her death. The only reason why she rose from the grave was to get revenge on others, albeit rather indiscriminately. So the moral of the story is, be kind to others or they may just split you in half. Now that is a message that can speak to all of us. Man, those Japanese have some creepy legends, some gory ones.
They they author those legends real well.
Oh,
Ooh.
check
So
it.
does that mean, you know, you've been involved in, or you've witnessed exorcism before? Have you witnessed a full blown exorcism, or what they call a minor exorcism?
There was one that myself and Kim Johnston, this priest, was called in to do an exorcism on a lady that claimed she was hearing a voice in her head of a demon telling her to do things.
Mm-hmm.
She went to a psychiatrist, and he deemed that she did not have schizophrenia. There was nothing medically wrong with her. And so she called on the priest. And this was a local lady here. And the priest actually got in touch with Spirit of Alabama because he thought it might be safe. He was coming in from out of town. He knew of Kim Johnston, and he thought it might be safe to have a little backup. And not to mention some prayers. So we met at a hotel room, and the lady came, and yeah, we watched him doing the rites over her. And you said it a few weeks ago. Hollywood, they'll exorcise somebody in 30 minutes in a movie, but in real life, it can take days, and this was just day one.
Well, actually, in
And,
real life, if you talk to a true exorcist, they can take years.
yeah, so yeah,
It
sometimes
don't happen quick at all. And do you know the difference between a minor and a major exorcism?
I guess minor is when I'm probably wrong, but I would guess that's people who haven't fully come into possession yet, where major, they're totally possessed, or am I wrong?
No, minor exorcism is pretty much like you would refer to as a house blessing or
Oh,
cleansing. Okay.
yeah, I on
And,
that.
yeah, a major exorcism is where somebody's individual is like possessed or something.
Okay.
And the majority of cases that come to a true exorcist are, I hate to use the word debunked, but they're turned down because they usually end up being some mental or emotional stuff. The Catholic Church and real exorcists, now there's people that made careers out of doing exorcisms, but the truly professionals, the first thing to do is they're going to ask you, they've got an intake process they go through. Have you had mental or emotional issues? Have you been suicidal? Are you doing, ever take, what kind of drugs you on? And it don't matter whether it's illegal or legal drugs. Some prescribed medicine can mess up your mind some too. They really go through a rigorous thing. So it's not like you just call somebody up and they say, ooh, okay, let me put on my robe and let me grab my cross and my holy water and I don't know, St. Michael, I invoke thee, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't work that way. Before they'll even come to you, they'll put you through this intake process. So the guys that's just going to show up at your house because some ghost hunting group called them is not a trained exorcist. What they are doing is they're kind of like a support or whatever, but they're not. They read a book or watched a YouTube video. If you really study what it takes to be a bona fide exorcist according to the Roman ritual, it's a whole process. So that's why you'll find a lot of people that'll contact like somebody like yourself that's associated with different events, and they'll say, "Well, we couldn't get a priest to help us out," and blah blah blah. Well, it's not that they couldn't get a priest to help them out; it's the priest has to go through this intake process to qualify you to see if you really need an exorcism. They just don't show up and start doing a ritual without some kind of validation that it's truly needed. Anyway, just for clarification, because I know a lot of people that call themselves an exorcist and even go out and present themselves as such. I don't know if there's any harm done. I'm not accusing of that, but it's not legitimate as far as the Roman ritual is concerned. Now, you don't have to do it according to the Roman ritual. That's just their way of doing it. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's just like what a Wiccan would use sage for cleansing. So
Mhm.
there's all kind of processes. But anyway, I just want a little bit of point of when and no exorcisms are identical. There's a certain stages that you go through, and you become aware of an alien feeling or some kind of entity, and then there's pretense, attempts by the evil spirit to appear and act as the victim, to be seen as one and the same person. The exorcist's first job is to break this pretense and find out who the demon really is. Naming the demon is the most important first step to be able to call the demon by its name. And the break point is the moment where the demon's pretense finally collapses, a scene of extreme panic and confusion, accompanied by a crescendo of abuse, horrible sights, noises, and smells. And I got to tell you, those noises and smells are usually of the victim um, making noises with their mouth, and the smells are usually, pardon me, but usually farts and body fluids. The demon begins to speak of the possessed victim in the third person instead of as itself. When they start and it's true possession, the demon will be speaking through the victim's mouth as if they are the victim. And when you get to a certain point, then the demon will start talking uh, as themselves, referring to themselves in the first person instead of the third person, if that makes any sense.
Mhm.
The voice, also a sign of the break point. The voice is inordinately disturbing or humanely distressing babble, which is like speaking in tongues if you're a Pentecost, except worse. Demon voices must be silenced for the exorcism to proceed because they will yell, scream, all kind of gibberish. Um, the clash, as the voice dies out, there's a tremendous pressure, both spiritual and physical. The demon has collided with the will of the kingdom. The exorcist, locked in battle with the demon, urges the entity to reveal more information about itself as the exorcist's holy will begins to dominate. As mentioned above, there is a direct link between the entity and place, as each spirit wants a place to be. For such spirits, habitation of a living victim is preferable to where? Hell, of course. And then the expulsion is the last stage. In a supreme triumph of God's will, the spirit leaves in the name of Jesus and the victim is reclaimed. All present feel the presence dissipating, sometimes with receding noises or voices. The victim may remember the ordeal or may have no idea of what has happened. And those steps and processes generally do not take place in one sitting. And exorcisms do not necessarily take place in someone's house. Sometimes the possessed person will come to the exorcist's office or the church, and they will perform all the ritual in the church. And then there's other ways that this goes. That's according to the Roman ritual, which is, well, the oldest. Um, um, I'm having a problem remembering a name that I'm looking for. Uh, what is that guy's name? And he's really made a name for himself as an exorcist. He's not a Catholic, but he has promoted himself. Um, I can't think of his name.
I guess you mean Ed Warren, do you?
No. Ed Warren's dead. This guy's still
Yeah.
kicking it hard, and he never tried to be a ghost hunter type. Um, he's got a church down in Florida, and he, um, hold on.
So I was just typing it in to see. Is it Jose Antonio Fortea?
Where is this guy's name?
Or here's one, Vincent Lampert.
What was the name?
Vincent Lampert.
Okay, I've heard of that one. This guy really made a name for himself. He's been on some TV shows. He does his own thing. Uh, and I found his picture, and I got to find his name. I recognize him. I know what he looks like. He's been around for a
We are
while.
back now with those real life Charlie's Angels.
Come
There's
on.
one woman who
Is
believes
it? Here's another one. Bob Larson.
Oh yes, that's him.
Is that him?
That's who I'm looking for. Come on. Okay. Yeah, Bob Larson. And he has made a true name. He grabs his Bible and he thumps people in the head with it. Have you ever watched him?
I haven't.
Oh yeah, he's really. And then he, for a while there, he promoted his teenage daughter. He had 3 little girls like Charlie's Angels. You never knew that?
Did they?
Oh yeah, man. He's running boy from A to Z. Hold on a second. We'll watch a short video since you're in the demon possessions tonight.
You're the one brought it up.
Huh?
You're the one that brought up exorcism.
No, you were talking about these possessions.
Oh, okay.
Let me see if I find his. Hold on, please.
Yeah.
Here we go. So I'm going to share this. Let me get this up here. And I'm going to share with you right here. Let's watch this, what he calls himself a true exorcist. And, it's the top of the hour real quick, folks. I'm Kelsey. This guy right there. Kevin the Cane, My Haunted Dolls. He wrote the book. You know that. Somebody commented here. Kevin, somebody's watching that says you work with them.
Oh, well, hello. I wonder who that is.
Facebook. Let's see who that is real quick before we go further here. Who was this? Somebody. I don't see it. They must be commenting on your page or something.
I don't know.
Samantha Jordan or John Tannery. Trying to find out who you are. Identify yourself.
Let's see. I don't have a comment on mine. I wonder.
Yeah, I'm looking here, and wait a minute. Here's a comment. There you go. Samantha Jordan Birch Prickett.
Samantha
And
Jordan.
Abnormal, Alabama, where I'm streaming it there. And you can reach out and say hi to her. You know this person? I said, do you work together?
See, now I'm going to be embarrassed and be put on the spot. We haven't been in the office in so long. We've got new people in our department.
I'm going to. Okay, while you're trying to track her down, go ahead.
I was going to say, if I saw her face, I'd be like, oh, yeah, I mean, you know.
Yeah, let's see.
I feel like a jerk now. Hello, Grandpa. I'm so sorry.
All right, I'm going to share this, and we're going to watch this teenage exorcist here.
Okay.
All right, share audio.
I got another creepy creature story too.
All right, okay, we're gonna be quiet here for a minute. We're gonna watch this little. Come on. There we go. Go.
So let me get this straight. You're Armenian, but you're originally from Iran. Okay? Let me ask just a couple of basic questions. Married or single?
Going through a divorce.
Going through a divorce, okay. Children?
3.
3 children. How old are you, may I ask?
39.
39. Okay. It just helps me to give context to what's going on here. You said there's been a lot of abuse and a lot of pain, such as?
You name it.
You name it, and you've been through it. Okay, all right. We're going to help you work through a little more of this, okay? Look at me, Marlene. I want to make sure I'm getting this right. Marlene? Okay, look at me. Are you a Christian? Speak up, come on, forcefully. Are you a Christian?
Yes.
Good. Then you belong to God.
Amen.
Satan can't have you.
Amen.
He's got to get out. I'm going to try to get to this stuff if you let me. Get there. Okay? Okay. anoint you again in the name of the Father, the Son. Well, watch it, guys. Quick. And the Holy Spirit. With the sword of the Spirit, I divide soul and spirit. You can't have her, Satan. You can't have her. You can't have her. Who are you? Who are you? Jezebel! Jezebel. From all the abuse? How did you get there? They seem to be quite proud of it. How did you get there? How did you get there? What? I command you through Christ, you tell me, how did you get there? Huh? Rape.
How'd you get there? Witchcraft. Witchcraft. Like rape. More than that. What is it? I want the answer. Answer me. Command you to answer me. Blood sacrifice? What kind of blood sacrifice? Answer me. What? Child sacrifice? When was it?
7 generations.
Line out.
So this is a
Yes.
form clearly of Bob Larson's, and let's see. Oh, here we go. Here is a. He really uses these teenagers. Let's play this little clip right here. This kind of tells a little bit about it here. So hold on one second. We'll start this right here. Bingo. And okay, so let's do this. You got to see these teenage exorcists. Are you ready for this?
Okay.
Okay. This is really he is really, I mean, and this guy's been, yeah, he's still out there.
Healed.
Are you healed?
Oh, hell yeah.
All right.
A very warm welcome, Teenage Exorcist.
Is not the latest occult TV show, but a trio of real-life, all-American homeschooled virgins from Phoenix, Arizona. 18-year-old Bryn and her two friends, the Sherkenback sisters, spend their spare time touring the world confronting the devil. Bob Larson, the man behind them, is Bryn's father, a highly controversial exorcist whose hopes of becoming a celebrity televangelist were dashed after this video went viral, causing huge public outcry.
I loose you for the curse. Homosexuality.
Like the many questionable preachers who've come before him, he's been repeatedly accused by the media of getting rich by preying on the weak.
The ministry's treated you well, financially.
Undeterred, he still maintains that half the world is demonically possessed. Having groomed the girls into a team of Hollywood-ready demon slayers, he's relaunching his crusade with his latest enterprise.
You three seem like coached, and you don't seem like you're talking like real people.
The exorcist claimed that the biggest causes of demonic possession are drug addiction and sexual abuse. So Bob was bringing the girls on their first overseas tour to perform exorcisms in troubled mining towns of Ukraine, where the numbers of drug addicts and abused women are among the highest in the world. Widespread poverty,
A poor healthcare system.
I think you get the point there.
Yeah.
So we're doing something wrong, aren't we, Kevin?
Doing something wrong.
We're missing our calling. We're missing our calling.
They said we need 3 teenage
You-
girls.
We need we need to take 3 of your dolls and turn them into exorcist dolls.
Oh, okay.
Was it Timmy? Is that one? Timmy?
Tim.
Tim? So we need to get a little miniature Bible to put in his hand. A little cross in the other hand.
Yeah.
Holy water. And you can, right? Okay. Or you can we find 3 girls to do this?
we we might wind up in jail, but yeah.
Oh my goodness. So you were, anyway, that crossed my mind because we talk about exorcisms and that kind of stuff. And now I'm really curious. There's other ones, but he's the kind of well known. And he also set up for training. He's got, there's more than him. John George. Have you heard of John George?
Nope.
So he's offering free online exorcism. So you can get exorcism. And of course, where's Bob Larson? Does he have his website anymore? He's got his Facebook page.
I don't know.
Huh?
I don't know.
Well, he's got a lot of books out there. So he's like you. He's an author. But here's one that I didn't know of, and this is John George, Jon George, John George Ministries, Self-Deliverance. Get delivered here. Please follow each step. Video in order. Honor, general deliverance, exposing the hidden things, persistence. There's just no doubt about it. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't need a Catholic priest. You can make all this happen. So, I don't know what you think about that.
I'd be a little leery about anybody just saying, "Hey, I'm an exorcist. Come on down. I can blast that demon out of you."
Well, I mean, Jesus did say, that we could all do these things. So I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know what to think about it.
It's one of those things you got to follow your senses on it, on whether or not you feel like.
I don't think you need anybody to pray. I think you can do your own praying. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't think you need to pay somebody.
No, we don't need to pay anybody.
Unless you want to. If you want to pay me, I will accept it. Okay? I am for sale.
What are you, a male prostitute now?
Hey, that's really shut things down. So, you gotta do what you gotta do. Did you get in touch with the girl there that said, "Hey, Kevin"?
I saw who she is. We're not friends.
Huh?
I think I saw her picture. I think I've seen her before.
Okay, she definitely knows you. Of course,
Yeah.
have you still got your sign up in your cubicle, Saint Kevin?
I think it's there. I can't remember. It's been 4 months since we were. I know all my plants are dead and everything up there at the office.
You haven't been there in a while, huh?
Not since mid-March.
Oh man, okay.
5 months.
You're never going back.
Oh, don't say that.
Oh well, can't have it all. Hey, it's already 8:15. Okay, let's see. We had a little exorcism thing going there. So let me do. You familiar with Tommy knockers?
Tommy knockers.
Yeah.
I heard the Stephen King book, The Tommy Knockers.
Well, let's get down what the Tommy knockers really are. They're called the knocker, the knacker, the waka, which is Welsh, bucka, which is Cornish, or the United States we call them Tommy knockers. It's a mythical creature in Welsh, Cornish, and Devon folklore. They are the equivalent of Irish leprechauns and English and Scottish brownies. I thought brownies were something you ate. Okay, about 2 feet tall and grizzled, but not misshapen, they live beneath the ground. Here, They wear tiny versions of standard miner's garb and commit random mischief, such as stealing miners' unattended tools and food. Their name comes from the knocking on the mine walls that happens just before cave-ins, actually the creaking of earth and timbers before giving way. To some of the miners, the knockers were malevolent spirits, and the knocking was the sound of them hammering at walls as supports to cause the cave-in. To others, who saw them as essentially well-meaning practical jokers, the knocking was their way of warning the miners that a life-threatening collapse was imminent. According to Cornish folklore, the knockers were the helpful spirits of people who had died in previous accidents in the many tin mines in the county, warning the miners of impending danger. To give thanks for the warnings and to avoid future peril, the miners cast the last bite of their tasty pasties into the mines for the knockers. In the 1820s, immigrant Welsh miners brought tales of the knockers and their theft of unwatched items, and warning knocks to western Pennsylvania when they gravitated there to work in the mines. Cornish miners, much sought after in the years following the 1848 gold rush, brought them to California. When asked if they had relatives who would come to work mines, the Cornish miners always said something along the lines, "Well, me cousin Jack over in Cornwall wouldn't come, wouldst come, could you pay his boat ride," and so came to be called Cousin Jacks. The Cousin Jacks, as notorious for losing tools as they were for diving out of shafts just before they collapsed, attributed this to their diminutive friends and refused to enter new mines until assured by the management that the knockers were already on duty. Belief in the knockers remained well into the 20th century when one large mine closed in 1956 and the owners sealed the entrance. Fourth, fifth, and sixth generation Cousin Jack circulated a petition calling on the mine owners to set the knockers free so that they could move on to other mines. And of course, the owners complied. Knocker also appeared as a name for the same phenomena in folklore of Staffordshire miners. So I don't know. When we used the term knockers, we were referring to something else. I didn't say what we were referring to. I just said we were referring to something else.
The image of Dolly Parton comes to mind.
Oh, okay. So what has my friend Kevin got in store for us now?
Ooh, I got a creepy legend. This is from another. Now I know a friend of mine from Australia comes on here, so I know we've got some Australian audience members that come in. So I'm going to throw a little nod to Australia with this little creature here called the bunny yip. Now don't let that cute name fool you, because the bunny yip is not like a bunny rabbit. Now it's this thing right here. It's a swamp creature. Despite its cutesy name, the bunny yip is a beast to be feared. It makes its home primarily in the creeks and swamps of Australia. It is amphibious and has been described in a variety of ways, although the consensus is it has a round head, long neck, and a body that looks something like a cross between an ox and a manatee. A report in the Wagga Advocate in 1872 said it was half as long as a retriever dog. Its body was jet black. You can tell one is near you if you hear booming or roaring noises, and you should pay heed to these noises as they are notorious for having a taste for human flesh, especially for women and children. Bunny yips appear to be nocturnal and does its best work creeping up on animals and humans in the dark. For this reason, Aboriginal tribes were understandably frightened to go near any water holes, wells, swamps, and waterbeds after dark. Long before Europeans ever set foot on Australia, the Aboriginal tribes told tales of the Bunyip. Bill Wannon, a researcher of Australian folklore, told the Murray River team, which specializes in tourism, that old Aborigines told him that the Bunyips devoured humans, coming up on them in silence and when least expected. When Europeans began to land and make contact with Aboriginal tribes, they heard tell of the Bunyip. It is believed that Europeans might have originally deeply feared the Bunyip. As Folklore Thursday succinctly puts it, imagine the first fleet of British people, half of which are convicts, first reactions to seeing a kangaroo and a echidna or a platypus. No wonder the tales of the Bunyip were accepted by the settlers. After seeing so many strange creatures, who were they to take a skeptical route when it came to the Bunyip? As noted, eyewitness accounts tend to be spotty regarding a similar description, but they can all agree on one thing: whatever they saw terrified them. A newspaper article from 1845, now 1845, reports the Bunyip then is represented as uniting the characteristics of a bird and of an alligator. It has a head resembling an emu with a long bill, at the extremity of which is a transverse projection on each side with serrated edges like the bone of the stingray. Its body and legs partake of the nature of the alligator. The hind legs are remarkably thick and strong, and the forelegs are much longer, but still of great strength. The extremities are furnished with long claws, but the natives say its usual method of killing its prey is by hugging it to death. When in the water, it swims like a frog, and when on shore, it walks on its hind legs with its head erect, in which position it measures 12 or 13 feet in height. The 1800s seemed to be the most popular time for reported bunyip sightings, and a bunyip skull was discovered in 1846 and put on display. However, it was later found out to be a hoax and was likely the skull of a deformed horse or cow. What are some of the more skeptic approaches to the bunyip? Well, it might be the rare appearance of fugitive seals far upstream, and the cry itself might be that of the bittern marsh bird. Others claim the bunyip may be an old cultural memory of the Dipruidon passed down from the times when megafauna roamed the Australian landscape. Diprotodons resemble giant wombats and were over 3 meters long. It might also just simply be a cautionary tale to avoid midnight jaunts around swamps that one could easily fall and drown in. Real or not, one thing for sure, an Australian swamp is not one of the places you want to be, especially at nighttime. So maybe that's just some lore to keep stragglers out of the swamp, keep children at home, kind of like the boogeyman over here.
You got the boogeyman?
I don't have a boogeyman, but
over here, so I'm looking. Where's boogeyman?
it's the bunyip, not the boogeyman.
Oh my goodness,
Weird
8:24, and we have 30 more minutes, roughly speaking, to go. I am Kelsey, and I have a couple of things to, of course, my Dating the Dead book, but so you got to get the wishing machine.
Oh.
Ooh. The wishing machine. And of course, we have the author of this book.
Yes.
There's another book.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Legend of Mindy. Oh, look at those books.
He's got a crap load of books here, don't he?
Yeah,
And what's that? Welcome.
there's my website, myhaunteddogs.com, writerkevinkane.com.
Let's see. You got that picture on your wall.
Yeah, there's the crying boy painting that here I am, what, a week, 2 weeks I've had this thing and I haven't seen any fires.
Yeah, but you didn't get the original. You just got a poster of it.
Yeah, they claim even a copy of it. And there's Patty Doll, another haunted doll novel that I wrote based on a real haunted doll. You can see her on the cover there, Patty. You can get those at my website, Crimson the Blood Painting. You can get these at myhauntedDolls.com if you want an autographed copy, or you can go on Amazon. They're on Kindle. A couple of these. The Crimson is on audiobook if you want to just listen. And Legends of Indian Narrows, that's performed by me on audiobook, so be sure to check that out. Stories of my old haunted neighborhood I grew up in.
Your own haunted neighborhood.
My own haunted neighborhood.
What really haunted that seriously?
Almost every house had a story. I know our house had some creepy goings on. We had slamming doors and alarms would go off in the middle of the night. We had something scratching the posts on the front porch. We had our little Shih Tzu dog would go crazy and bark at things we couldn't see. I heard a woman's voice calling out my name in the middle of the night. It was not my mother. And my sister heard the same thing. There were footsteps in the attic, and the attic was just a crawl space. You could not walk in there. Yet we would hear footsteps up there. And running up and down the stairs as well. And we had appliances act funny on us. So there's a lot of stories there. And that story about my house is in that book as well. So
you got it covered. So I'm looking at something, and I can't think of the name of it, but there is a process you go through it. I'd learned this a long time ago, and there's a name for it. And you can create your own hauntings, your own monsters. A lot of times a small group of people get together and they will actually create this entity. And there's certain steps you go about doing it. You, of course, have a name for it is one of the first things. You give it any kind of name you want to, Billy, Bob, or Kevin even. Then it's like, what kind of an entity are you trying to create? It could be anything from a vampire, a werewolf, alien, zombie, or a ghost, whatever, even a demon. And then you need to know, you got to give it a place to dwell. It could be under your bed, it could be in your closet, it could be in your neighborhood, it could be in the trees outside your house, but you have to go through these steps. And then you got to do a profile. You got to create a personality and how it looks. You're creating this from scratch, and you're giving it this. And I've said this many times before, and a lot of people don't think about it, but it's like the American flag. The American flag on its own has no power whatsoever. It's a cloth. The American flag has no more power than the Nazi flag or the Confederate flag. They're all just pieces of cloth with certain designs on them. The piece of cloth and those designs on their own have no power whatsoever. But we empower it, we give it, we create that power. We've taken that design, and now, let's say you're a United States citizen and you see the American flag, you immediately have a certain emotion come over you from that flag because of what it represents, the power that we've given it. Likewise, if you see the Nazi flag, you have another kind of emotion come out. So we're creating all this stuff as we go through life. Maybe we didn't personally create it, but some human being at some point created these things. So it's the same way with creating your own hauntings, your own monsters, your own creatures. You go through these steps, then you design what they should look like. What do you want your entity to look like? and you may sketch it out on a piece of paper. And then you want to create some friends or enemies of this creature. If there's more than one entity that you're making up here, then you make them a friend or enemy of someone else. You can make up the bad guy, the good guy. It's just like writing a book, which Kevin knows a little bit about that. And you develop stories about this. Eventually, what you'll find, and tell me if you've experienced this or not, Kevin, when you start writing a novel, a fiction, do your characters begin to take on a life of their own outside of your imagination?
Yeah, that absolutely happened when I was writing Patty Doll, and the antagonist, the bad guy. I wrote him so horrible and so disgusting and scary, terrifying that it got to where when I like one day in the middle of that process, it was Sunday afternoon. I went to watch my nephew play baseball, and I found myself looking around at the crowd, wondering if that guy was there.
So it took on a life of its own.
And yeah, I mean, because he could somebody like that could very well be out there as a human monster, you know.
Yeah. So I know I have never published anything fiction like that, but I have written some. I just never published it. I've started stories and whatnot. And you start out developing this story, and then you create in your mind, it takes on its own shape, it takes on its own personality. You gave it life, but at some point in that story, it kind of like it takes over. You're no longer creating it, it's telling its own story.
Uh-huh.
Does that make sense to you
Yeah.
from your experience? And I know other authors it's the same way. So technically speaking, amazing as it is, you can create your own entities. That's how a lot of urban legends get started, because it's just told and told. And eventually, people actually swear to God they saw this woman spirit hitchhiking alongside the road. They swear to God, and it's like, well, it's Lost Furnaces. What's the guy? Slag? Was that his name? Never existed, but it was told and repeated and shared to where Slag took on his own. And now people that go ghost hunting at Lost Furnaces, we got Slag,
Yeah, there's no slag. I've seen other spirits there, workers, but not slag. There's no slag.
So,
Fun
but
story,
it's amazing how that happens, because we can create, a lot of people say, well, send me a haunted doll. It's like, well, you can take any doll and get it possessed.
These scissors are haunted.
That's it.
At nighttime, they rattle around.
Is that blood I saw on the tip of it? That's some awful big scissors. What do you do with those big scissors?
This is the offices, cut paper, you're asking too many questions.
Oh, man. So let's see. We need another story or two.
I got one here.
Okay, go ahead. Run with it.
Urban legends. I've got one. Being a haunted doll collector, I've got one about an antique doll. And it doesn't have a particular name, but boy, does it look freaky. Here, let me get on here. There's that bad boy right there. Let me tell the story while you look on that ugly, scary. On the morning of her birthday, Lucy's mother woke her up and told her a package had arrived in the mail and it was addressed to her. The girl hurriedly unwrapped the gift and was horrified at what she found. Inside, it was the most disgusting old doll she had ever seen. It was completely bald and its skin was cracked and caked in dirt. The worst thing of all was its teeth. They were long, pointy, sharp, and beastly. They looked like an animal's fangs. With a shiver, she took the doll and threw it in a corner. Her mother scolded her, telling her that someone had gone to a lot of trouble to send her this antique doll. Her mother told her she had better appreciate it. Lucy tried to protest, but her mother would not listen. She forced the young girl to keep the doll. So, to put her mind at rest, Lucy stuffed the antique doll into the little cupboard under the stairs, behind a pile of shoes, where she wouldn't have to look at the ugly, evil little thing. It was not until a few nights later, when Lucy was lying in bed, that she heard a noise, a shuffling sound which went on for about 5 minutes. Then a brief dragging noise, and finally a scuttling like the light footsteps walking very fast. By now, Lucy was shaking in her bed with fear, unable to move. Then she thought she heard a faint, raspy voice whispering quietly from downstairs. Lucy always slept with the door open and the landing light on, as she was a little scared of the dark. She heard the voice say, "Lucy, I'm on the first step." And then loud scrabbling again, as whatever was speaking apparently turned tail and returned to its place of hiding. Lucy was so scared she didn't sleep a wink that night, but laid in fear until the break of dawn, when her mother got her up for school. Lucy tried to explain to her mother what had happened the night before, but was so tired that when her mother passed it off as just a dream, she began to believe it might be the case. Of course, it was not. Lucy begged her parents to let her throw the antique doll in the garbage, but they insisted that it was a present and she had to keep it. So Lucy reluctantly went back to bed, telling herself that it had only been a dream. She checked the cupboard under the stairs, but the doll was exactly where she had left it. That night, Lucy fought sleep, but she eventually drifted off, even though she had fought sleep. Presently, the deep, disembodied voice woke Lucy again. She wondered if she could only hear it in her head. "Lucy, I'm on the fourth step," it said. Then came the scuffling noise, and the voice didn't reoccur that night. Lucy was crying by now, and again she didn't sleep that night. At school, Lucy told her friends about the doll, and of course they laughed at her. Lucy could only think that if the doll was climbing 4 steps at a time, then there was only one more night to go. That night, Lucy decided to shut her bedroom door. When her mother turned her light out, she asked why Lucy was no longer scared of the dark. Lucy replied that she was, and could she leave her light on instead of the hall light. But her mother pointed out that her bedroom light was so bright it would keep her awake, and said no. Therefore, Lucy agreed to just sleep without a light. She opened the bedroom curtains instead to light the room a little, and just as she began to doze, she heard the noise. And then the voice came, very clear this time. "Lucy, I'm on the top step." In the darkness of her bedroom, Lucy heard a click and trembled with fear. She wasn't sure, but she thought she could see her bedroom door opening very, very slowly. The next morning, Lucy's parents found her body at the bottom of the stairs. They guessed that she had been on her way to the toilet during the night, and in the darkness had slipped and fallen down the stairs, breaking her neck. The antique doll was found beside her body, and it was buried with Lucy. Everyone said what a tragedy it was. "She loved that doll," said her mother. "Now they can be together forever." Now, I gotta just comment on the parents in this story. If somebody sent my child a doll that ugly, like that, and I didn't know who it was, do you think I'd let my child keep that doll? Hell no.
Oh yeah, I'm different. I'd make my child keep it.
Well, I would keep it locked up, but I wouldn't let my child.
Oh yeah, I just like yeah. We're gonna you need to keep that dog.
Ooh, Kelsey.
So I believe my friend is possessed by a demon.
Who,
At
me?
first, you could be. At first, everything was normal. We went camping with a group of friends, and she was enjoying herself just fine. It wasn't until night that this would come out of her. I've never stayed the night with her before, so I'm not sure if this is new or if this is a regular thing. But here we go. We were all really exhausted from running around in the heat, so everybody crashed. There were about 5 of us in one giant tent. I thought everyone had fallen asleep, but after I dozed off, I heard some slapping noises. So I opened my eyes and saw her standing in the corner of the tent in a jumping jack position, but not jumping, raising her arms and slapping her sides really fast. Her arms looked like sticks. They were so stiff. I thought to myself, give her a nightgown and this is the shit out of horror movies. But I didn't realize how right I was at the moment. I chalked it up to needing to get some energy out before bed and kept trying to sleep. But a little while later, I heard some really creepy laughter. Didn't even sound like her. I finally woke up and said something to her like, dude, what is so funny? What are you laughing about in the dark alone? But she didn't answer. The laughter sounded a bit like crying as well, so I said, are you laughing or crying? And this time she answered. She said, both fucking fuckers. She yelled it, and it was intense. So I said, are you all right? She didn't answer. I was like, okay, I'm just going to go to sleep through this now, and I'm more than just a little bit freaked out. She did this the entire night. She was later on the ground, legs spread, just slapping herself and on the ground, and laughing hysterically while yelling, fucking fuckers. Weird, right? Well, the next day I told her, she really creeped me out, and I tried to ask her what she was doing. She said, I guess I just had to get it out of me. And I was like, all right, you're weird, but I still like you. She seemed okay for most of the day until, again, nighttime. This time I saw her switch from herself to this demon. We were walking casually through a festival, just talking and being happy, but all of a sudden she looks at me extremely intense and starts speed walking. I thought something happened, so I ran up next to her like, what's going on? She gave me this face I'll never forget. Lip corners turned down, eyes like fire. She said, I'm not listening. I didn't want to lose her in the festival because I felt she was in danger to herself and possibly to others. So I chased her through this place and tried to get her to sit down. She started laughter again, that dark, sinister, creepy-ass laugh that turns into a cry, and then a laugh again that stayed very quiet. Otherwise, unless it was an insult to me. I tried to make small talk just to see if I could break through whatever she was going through, but she was completely resistant. I finally got her back to camp, and when we got there, she sat in a chair, very still, just smiling that creepy smile, then turning down the corners of her mouth, doing that contorted face. Her eyes were intense. She was looking at me like she was going to jump up and choke me. You ever felt someone's hatred and felt like they were going to kill you? I have, and this was it. I felt like at any moment I could be killed by this girl. I said, girl, what has gotten into you? I'm really creeped out. And then she got on her hands and knees and crawled toward me, smiling like she was thinking some terrible shit, and then she bobbed her head left and right, trying to keep eye contact with me. I smiled at her because I didn't know what else to do. She smiled back. I shook my head yes. She shook her head yes. I shook no. She did the same. She was now copying me. It was so creepy. So I finally said to her, look, I don't know how to read you and take you right now. And if you don't stop, I'm going to leave. I'm not going to put up with this much longer. And then the laughter started again. She started tapping her nails on my chair and pushing the little button that makes it recline like she's a maniac. Like fast pulses and movements. It was nuts. I felt like this was some kind of a demon trying to rudely play with me. Finally, her boyfriend walks in, and I stood up so fast I was like, bye. I didn't say anything to him about it. I just left. Now I have these memories that make me cry every time I think about it. If I picture her standing in that tent, my body's covered in goosebumps and tears are running down my face. I'm shook. I cried the whole time I typed this. I haven't contacted her yet, but I think she's coming back home today from that camp, and I don't know how to ask her about this. I want to try to get her some help, but I'm just super worried about what will happen if I stoke the fire. I should also add that this girl is in her 30s, so I don't think she was acting. She's too mature to pretend to be possessed. I went camping with my friend as she morphed from a sweetheart to a demon 2 nights in a row. I haven't asked about it yet since I've been back. Not sure how to proceed. Finally, she called me yesterday to see if I'd let her sleep over for a couple of days. She said she needed to get her stuff together before she goes back to her home state. I told her my kids were home with me and I didn't feel right letting her come in because of what happened over the weekend. It really scared me. That I was scared for my life in the most literal sense. She was surprised but not shocked. She didn't ask what happened. I think she was probably pretty reluctant to actually find out, but I told her anyway. I relayed the whole story, and I said that I thought she should get some help. She was really concerned that she scared everyone away because apparently her boyfriend has dumped her, and all the other friends of the 10 are no longer talking to her, which makes me really sad. I guess they did hear her. They just didn't care enough to do anything about it. So I assured her that I'm not going to abandon her, but I'm going to find her some help. I suggested that she looks into some spiritual therapy to try to release what darkness is inside of her. Whether it's emotional or spirit acting through her, she really needs help. I mentioned that I thought she may have a friend in there who needs to go home, and she says she knows she needs help and is willing to get it. I think it was all very overwhelming for her, so she politely asked if I'd let her call me back, and I said, yes, of course. But I haven't heard from her yet. But I suspect I'll get a call today. So now I've been talking to her daily to make sure she's doing all right. Haven't really dug too far to make sure whatever that was isn't a recurring thing, because I think it's important to have a soft landing place without interrogation. So that's the story right there. Look at that look on his face. Are you possessed?
I'm not possessed.
Demon Kevin.
I'm not possessed.
Oh, yes, you are. Oh, my goodness. We're down to, can you believe this is the middle of August already?
I know. The 18th. We're kind of coming out in the middle, going toward the end.
You know, it's going to be September here pretty quick.
It's going to be Halloween pretty quick.
So, you know, when you were back in school, did the teacher, when you were in school, any of the grades, did they ever have you do a little, what I did last summer, little speech?
Yeah. I think we did a little of that in middle school. At least as far back as I can remember.
So what would you say about this summer?
Let's see. I try not to get sick with the COVID-19. I had to stay home. I could not go fishing or go to the beach or breathe.
You must have known this was going to happen. That's why you moved, so you have a bigger house.
Yeah, everybody's spread out now. The neighbors are way off, acres away.
So did your brother get moved in the other place?
He's still living in the guest house back
Yeah.
here.
Okay.
Uh,
So it's all working out good.
yeah,
Do you get to spend any time out on the land? I mean, outside, wandering around?
I go out and walk and exercise and everything. I get to go out there and I just walk around. I get my exercise in. I get to see everything. And we got a big swing down here now that I can go sit in. We got a nice, some furniture on the patio to sit in, and
Yeah.
we're just coming up with new ideas. There's a huge probably this past week we had a guy come out and bush hog the parts of the pasture that were grown up. So now we got even bigger yard out of the acreage.
Wow. Well, you're enjoying it.
Yeah, I even put a little fountain out here, a bird bath fountain, so I can sit
Really?
out.
All right.
I love fountains.
Well, have you walked around the land and done any spirit box work? Just walking around the land out there?
Not out on the land yet. I've done it here in the house, but in fact, now I did post a video out there on my YouTube, My Haunted Dolls, Kevin Kane. You can go on myhauntedDolls.com and follow the link on the link page. And I posted a video this past Saturday of Tim, who we had on the show a few weeks ago, or last week. No, a couple of weeks ago.
Are you lost?
Are
you lost?
Yeah, I'm lost. I did a spirit box with him, but what I want to do next is venture up here to this attic because I've heard footsteps. A walk-through attic goes all the way across, and I want to do spirit box and video up there and see what happens.
Have you been up there yet?
Oh yeah, we put stuff up there, but I want to go up there and video and do spirit box. And,
take a blanket and pillow with you and just stay up there one night.
Yeah, it's too hot. I'd melt.
Wintertime will come.
But yeah, I thought about too getting outside and doing some spirit box and video at nighttime. See if I come across something.
Yeah.
And try not to get hit by the horse out there. I don't want to spook him.
Does he gallop around a whole lot out there?
Yeah, he's still young. He's 13 years old, and yeah, he gallops around. He's playful. He likes to come up to the fence and put his head over and say hello to us in his own way. And then turn his butt around to us and take a dump right there in front of us.
My camera keeps freezing.
Well, mine.
There we go.
Oh, it's Frankenstein.
Coming to get you.
Fire bad.
Actually, here's the one. You ready for this?
Okay. What the Looks like somebody got electrocuted.
There we go.
Oh.
I got all these all this stuff up here. You've got your dolls.
Yeah.
Mine are all kind of like small stuff, so I don't know where this one came from, but that's kind of a strange looking dragon of sorts.
I got something this past week. I actually have a little video clip I can show of it right here.
Yeah. You got time? You know how to do it?
Yeah, let me put it up here. I can.
Here, are you going to be cremated or buried?
I'm going to be cremated.
Oh, yeah. So you will not be needing this.
No, I don't. Tiny for me.
I put a little bit of your ashes in here. But you do have choices. We have different styles. You see,
Yeah.
yeah, and then
Well, let me get my video back up here. I thought I
Yeah,
had it
but-
right here, but I can get it pulled up here. Let's see. No, not there. Oh, come on, slow poking computer. Here we go. All right, let's see if I can go ahead and put this video up here. First, I want to save it.
What is that spooky noise?
It's a little waterfall I got here in the office now. If I can
Okay.
get the video to show up on my computer.
On your computer?
Yeah, I had it saved, and now
Excuse me.
it just ain't gonna show up on here. I don't know what's going on.
Where is it? I mean,
It's
where
on-
is it on YouTube or on your computer?
It's on Facebook.
Well, you can share it. Go to share screen. If you got it opened up on another page.
Not yet. I'm trying to get this crap out of the way that's popping up here. Here we go. Come on. There we go. Let's see. So I can share screen.
Yep, but at the bottom says share screen.
Oh, here we go. Share screen.
Mhm.
All right.
And then just click on share screen, that pop up. And then make sure, is it audio with that you want to share?
Yeah.
Click on audio, share audio.
Okay.
And then over Chrome tab. And then you'll find the one you want to share. You see it?
Okay. Yeah. In fact, I got it up here, man.
Yeah.
Here we go. Isn't that purty?
Purdy. That's about as purdy as it gets.
I got that sitting on my desk.
That is really pretty. Where'd you find that at?
I found it on Amazon.
Ah, okay.
There we go.
That's what you wanted to show us.
Yeah.
All right, we're down to 2 minutes. What's that book?
Crimson the Blood painting, based on the actual haunted painting right there on the cover. She comes from Salem, Massachusetts, and the painting hung in the home of a practicing witch who died, and it's said to be a haunted painting. So, and there's my haunted collection that tells all about the original haunted items that I collected. And there's Legends of Indian Narrows. That's also an audiobook. You can hear me tell the stories. That's the book about my childhood neighborhood that I grew up in and my childhood home that had spooky goings on. There's Patty Doll that I mentioned earlier, a novel based on my first haunted doll that I ever owned, Patty. And there's Tammy Baby, based on a novel based on another haunted doll that I had. And there's my website. You can find these books at just go to myhaunteddolls.com. And there's one of the bones.
This is Lisa Luna's new book that's come out now, Throwing the Bones. And you see her name right there. You can contact her through Facebook and get her book from her. And then, of course, you can go right there and learn all about our relationship with the dead. And don't be freaking out over this, because if you're a ghost hunter, you're all into dead people. So get over it. Okay? So there you go. Well, it's been a pleasure again. And
Yes.
there's the websites, drkelseywishmaker.com, myhauntedDolls.com, abnormalalabama.com. We're on YouTube. Subscribe to our channels. My Haunted Dolls, Kevin Kane YouTube, Abnormal Alabama, YouTube. If you haven't joined our fun, exciting, and just thrilled by the moment Facebook group, we get new members every day. That thing is rocking over there. Abnormal Alabama, make sure Kevin can approve you too. He's one of our moderators. He's one of our founding fathers. Get him a blog. Four score and 2 days ago.
7 years ago.
So anyway, thank you all, and we're going to say good night, peace and love. He does this.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.